Okay, welcome. Welcome to this, the annual council of the Isle of Wight Council in May 2022. I'm Jeff Brodie, chairman of the council at present. Welcome to all councillors, staff, members of the public, media reporters, and any guests. So I don't think we have any. I just need to run through an emergency procedure as usual. There are no planned fire drills during this meeting. If you hear the fire alarm sound, please treat it as a real emergency and evacuate the building via the nearest safe escape route. The nearest escape route is via the signposted set of stairs to your left as you leave the council chamber or public gallery. Exit via the door at the back of the building, walk across the inner car park around the building to the evacuation point, which is the pavement opposite the police station. The lifts can't be used in the event of an emergency. Please do not re-enter the building until you're advised it's safe to do so by a council member of staff. I request that all mobile phones are switched off or on mute, and I request that all speakers use microphones when addressing the meeting. I would like to advise members of the public and the media that this meeting is being recorded. Before I start the formal agenda for this meeting, I wish to make a statement as chairman of the council. After the elections last May, I was persuaded by the then putative council leader against my long-held values to seek election as chair of this council. This is a role that is the civic leader of the council, and as such involves an entirely anachronistic expectation of having a Christian faith and support for the monarchy, neither of which I have, as well as effective chairing of full council. I was elected to the role and have felt decidedly uncomfortable ever since. Chairing full council has never been a problem, but having to constantly decline attending faith and monarchical events to general disappointment and disapproval has become tiresome. Therefore, I will not be seeking nomination for a second year this evening, despite knowing that I would have at least all the real opposition supporting me in such an election. I feel I am better placed for the next 3 years as an opposition councillor myself, being able to hold to account any administration at full council rather than presiding over it. As the longest serving democratic socialist on the Isle of Wight Council, there is no doubt that the current administration needs scrutiny from the left and not just the right and centre. Once my successor has been elected, I will then return to the opposition side of the chamber, where I have spent all but the last one of my 17 years. And I thank those staff who have supported me over the past year. And I also say there is no need to thank me for my service as chair. I'm a realist, and I know that half the council will be glad to see the back of me. Thank you. We will now begin the formal agenda of the meeting. The first item is to elect a chairman of the council for the ensuing year, and I seek nominations. Councillor Peter Wilcox.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Claire Christensen. Would you like me to speak to that, or?
A second. Is there a seconder?
I'd like to second that, please.
Okay. Would you like to speak to Councillor Peter Wilcox?
Thank you. Claire Christensen, Councillor Christensen, has been an excellent vice chair over the last year. In particular, she has undertaken all the civic duties of the chairs and vice chair in the year. As such, and with her previous work on the council, she is an ideal candidate to become chair for the forthcoming year. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to nominate Councillor Quirk.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Ward, thank you. Would you like to say anything, Councillor Robertson?
Yes, please. Yeah. My reasons for nominating Councillor Quirk have nothing to do with my views as to the suitability of any other candidate. They are purely and wholly positive reasons for wanting Councillor Quirk to be put in the chair for the next year. This council has no overall control. There is not a political group who has overall majority on this council. That was the verdict of the voters at the last election. The Alliance Group have espoused the principle of proportionality, and I'm grateful to them for that. They have restored reverse proportionality to corporate scrutiny, notwithstanding that delivers the same numbers as without restoring reverse, because there are the same number of Tory councillors as there are Alliance councillors. In the spirit of proportionality, it's entirely sensible, fair and reasonable that the chair of the council should swing between the two largest groups. It was the Alliance who nominated the current council chair, and they secured their nomination. It's entirely fair that this coming year, the Conservatives secure their nomination. And so it would follow, if that happened, that the Alliance would take the chair in the year after that. Councillor Quirk himself has served already an entire council term. He's been on the council for 5 years. And I think the chair of the council particularly is a role that is demanding and requires experience and knowledge of the Constitution. And Councillor Quirk has those qualities. It's therefore my submission that if the Alliance are meaningful and those who stood as independents at the last election, if they are meaningful when they say cross-party working, allow them to make the clearest possible indication and show that they are comfortable with someone that they have not nominated being chair of the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Does anybody else wish to say anything? I will take the opportunity as the outgoing chair of this council to make my own comments regarding the choice that there is before you. This is a hung council. We have an administration led by a group that is only the second largest group, supported by 3 members. It is imperative that we have a chair who knows how to handle meetings that can sometimes be fractious and extremely difficult. Councillor Critchinson has covered for me on religious and monarchical issues, but to say she's covered for all things, as the leader said, is inaccurate. I have covered for all our armed forces issues because I have no issue with supporting our armed forces. But I have chaired the meetings. I've chaired the meetings rigorously. I've dealt with abuse and threats of violence from the public gallery. And it is not an easy role to take. This is not a council with an overwhelming majority ruling group. Councillor Quirk I've known for 5 years. For 4 years, he chaired with extreme competence the planning committee. Sad reflection of what it's been like over the last year. Councillor Quirk gained my confidence during that time with his competence in managing the most politically sensitive part of this council, the planning committee, and I think he will fulfil it excellently. Councillor Critchinson, in my view, could make a chair at some point in the future. However, I still think that she should continue perhaps as the vice chair of this council, and I personally will be voting for Councillor Quirk. Okay, I'm going to put it to the vote. The choice is between Councillor Critchinson and Councillor Quirk. I'm going to suggest we have a named vote on that. And I believe that's normally taken by reading out the names and you indicate who you are voting for. And I'll ask the monitoring officer to do that. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor PC Wilcox. Thank you. Councillor Critchinson, yes, thank you. Councillor Adams.
Councillor Critchinson.
Councillor Critchinson, thank you. Councillor Andre.
Councillor Critchinson.
Councillor Critchinson, thank you. Councillor Bacon.
Councillor Critchinson.
Councillor Critchinson, thank you. Councillor Daw.
Councillor Critchinson.
Councillor Critchinson. Councillor Downer. Councillor Critchinson, thank you. Councillor Fuller.
Councillor Claire Critchinson.
Councillor Critchinson, thank you. Councillor Jarman.
Councillor Critchinson.
Councillor Critchinson, thank you. Councillor Jones-Evans.
Councillor Claire Critchinson.
Councillor Critchinson, thank you. Councillor Jordan.
Councillor Critchinson.
Councillor Critchinson, thank you. Councillor Levy.
Councillor Critchinson.
Councillor Critchinson, thank you. Lever, sorry. Councillor Lilly.
Councillor Critchinson.
Councillor Critchinson, thank you. Councillor Love.
Councillor Claire Critchinson.
Councillor Critchinson, thank you. Councillor Lucioni.
Councillor Critchinson.
Thank you. Councillor Medland.
Councillor Critchinson.
Councillor Critchinson, thank you. Councillor Stevens.
Councillor Critchinson.
Councillor Critchinson, thank you. Councillor Garrett. Councillor Critchinson, thank you. Councillor Pitcher.
Councillor Critchinson.
Councillor Critchinson, thank you. Councillor Quigley.
Councillor Critchinson.
Councillor Critchinson, thank you. Councillor Beston.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk, thank you. Councillor Brading's not present, or is he? No, not present. Yep, just double checking, thank you. Councillor Churchman.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk, thank you. Councillor Drew.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk, thank you. Councillor Ellis. Councillor Quirk, thank you. Councillor Hastings.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk, thank you. Councillor Henry.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk. Councillor Mosdell.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk. Councillor Nicholson.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk. Councillor Oliver.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk. Councillor Outlaw. Councillor Quirk, thank you. Councillor Peace.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk, thank you. Councillor Price. Thank you. Councillor Quirk. Councillor Quirk.
Myself.
Okay, Councillor Quirk, thank you. Councillor Redrup.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk, thank you. Councillor Robertson.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk, thank you. Councillor Spink.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk. Councillor Ward.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk. Councillor Critchinson.
Councillor Critchinson.
Thank you. And Councillor Brodie.
Councillor Quirk.
Right, so let's just do a quick calculation. So, 2018, yeah.
Okay. The vote was Councillor Critchinson 20, Councillor Quirk 18. I declare Councillor Claire Critchinson Chairman of the Council for 22-23. Congratulations.
congratulations, Chairman, for assembled members and members of the public watching this evening. Councillor Claire Critchison, as you're aware, has been elected Chairman of the Isle of Wight Council for the ensuing year, and is just currently completing a declaration of acceptance of office. And I would actually call upon the Chairman, please, to read out the declaration of acceptance of office, which will then be signed and I'll countersign.
I, Claire Critchison, having been elected to the office of Chairman of the Isle of Wight Council, declare that I take that office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of it according to the best of my judgment and ability.
Thank you, Chairman, and if you just kindly sign and I'll countersign. And sign for you. Copy and again, congratulations, Chairman. You've duly given the declaration of acceptance of office and you are therefore acting in that office. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Appointment of the consort now. The appointment of my consort, Mr. Critchison, will be a consort, and I am taking a chain opposite presented, but he's not here this evening, so all a surprise. So I think I'll start by just sort of saying thank you to everybody. I have got a little bit of a speech, so I'm having trouble keeping the chain on as well. So it's a little bit bigger than the other one, so I might get some bigger shoulders. So I will start by just saying that thank you. So I can do it now. That I'm delighted to be elected Chair of the Isle of Wight Council. It's a huge honour that I do not take lightly, and I thank all those who supported me. I've very much enjoyed my year as Vice Chair, and it's been a pleasure to represent the Isle of Wight at many events on and off island, including the WI Centenary Service, Remembrance Day Parade, Civic Days in Hampshire, installation of the Bishop of Portsmouth, the Royal Garden Party, and many more. As an ambassador for our wonderful island, it's a fantastic opportunity to ensure the Isle of Wight is an important asset and given high regard. I will continue to develop this important role within the Council over the next year. This year is an extra special year with the celebrations of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, and I look forward to attending many events within our communities to celebrate this amazing milestone that will be remembered for years to come. As world events continue to unfold in Ukraine and beyond, the moment of reflection sessions will be ever more important, and I'll be continuing with these to ensure there is a time before meetings for those who wish to express their faith or beliefs. I will introduce a multi-faith element to this, starting with a visit from a representative of the Baha'i community on the island. Difference and diversity are to be celebrated, and we welcome all to our beautiful island. Thank you. We're moving on to the appointment to elect a Vice Chairman of the Council for the year. So I'm going to ask for nominations. Laura, Councillor Peter Wilcox.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Carl Love, please.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'd like to second that.
We have a nomination from, yes. Do we need a moment? We're going to have a pause, adjournment.
To point out that unless the leader is intending to sack Carl Love from the cabinet, a cabinet member, I don't believe, can be chair or vice chair of the Alloy Council, which I would have thought the administration should have known by now. Thank you.
Well, I have called an adjournment if we want it, or adjournment, please.
Chair, are we allowed to speak out of turn, or are we going to wait for your
I'm happy
permission?
there's an
please?
adjournment.
Thank you.
If-
How about you, councillor?
Adjournment, please. I think it'd just be 5 minutes. I think there's a procedural issue with scenarios playing out. Yes, the recording is still on, but there's no sound unless you have your mic. Can I call the meeting back to order, please? Adjournment is over. Check with you, Councillor Peter Wilcox, what you are deciding for nomination.
Thank you. We thought we'd got clarification on the issue. So Councillor Love is absolutely dedicated to his cabinet role, and much as he was very much looking forward to being vice chair of the council, his dedication to the role of adult social care cabinet member is very vital and important to him at this time. So my nomination is Councillor Michael Lilly. Thank you.
I absolutely second that. Thank you.
Seconder from Councillor Lucioni. And Councillor Robertson, do you have a nomination?
Yes, I do, Chair. But can I congratulate you on being elected to the chair of this council? And in particular, thank you for giving the Conservative group a cake just before this meeting took place. You'll realise, unfortunately, although tasty, it wasn't tasty enough to get our vote on this occasion, but there is next year. I would like to nominate Chris Quirk for the same reasons given for his nomination for chair. And I think even more, given that the Alliance have secured their nomination for chair of this council for a second year in a row, and given that they are just so keen to ensure that the group of 18 on this side of the chamber don't get a vice nomination, they even sought to double job a cabinet member. And the spectacle we've just seen in the adjournment is the council leader walking around the room, apparently asking Councillor Bacon, Jordan and Stevens who they'll accept, and then walking around the room trying to find a volunteer.
So is that
So
your
in my
nomination?
submission, I would urge, this time I appeal to those who've stood as political candidates, that if you are non-aligned, surely you agree to a non-alliance nomination taking the vice chair for this year.
Do you have a seconder?
I hope so after that.
Yeah. Thank you. Which one am I taking? Councillor Ward. Okay. Thank you. Right. Would anyone else like to speak on those nominations? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. My congratulations to you. I hope you have a very successful and rewarding and enjoyable year ahead of you. You'll have my full support on that. The leader of the Conservative group has referred to the unaligned members, and as one of those unaligned members, I feel it's only right that I speak ahead of how I shall vote. I have known Councillor Lilly from for the last 5 years. We were both newbies to this council at that point. I forged a close friendship with Councillor Lilly. He is an immensely dependable, devoted, passionate man to the causes that I believe in as well. And although the roles of chair and vice chair, as you know, Chair, are not political ones in the sense of party political, they're small p political, you do advance things of which you are passionate for and provide leadership to our community, and our community looks to those people for that leadership. And I believe Councillor Lilly would be able to support you in that role fantastically. So I wanted to be sure that I wasn't just a hand going up or a name being called out, that I had spoken out and made it clear why I would choose Councillor Lilly over Councillor Quirk. May I say, actually, having known Chris Quirk for pretty much the same period of time, well, exactly the same period of time, I feel sure he could well do the role very ably and in very much the same terms, although perhaps motivated philosophically in slightly different ways. But having known Councillor Lilly, and particularly through our corporate scrutiny days, I know he will do an exceptional job, exceptionally well in this role if he is so appointed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Love first.
Thank you, Chair. I wholeheartedly support Councillor Lilly in his nomination for this role. We've seen the excellent work that he does as chair of Mayor of Ryde, and I think that he do a superb job in supporting you in representing our council on all sides of the chamber, and I'll be voting for you, and I wish.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Brodie.
I will say exactly what I said when I was sat up there. And first, I'm going to say congratulations on your successful election. I will say exactly the same thing. I think now that you're chair, you need a vice chair who will be a steady pair of hands, whose judgment will not be questionable on civic matters. And I refer to the fact that these two gentlemen are the two previous chairs of the planning committee so far. Chris Quirk, 4 years, steady, non-controversial. I think even if she was allowed to, Mrs. Pereira would probably agree with that, but she's not allowed to. And then the last year, chaos from meeting to meeting. a total misjudgment in seeking the chair when he knew there was a major application coming before that committee. Absolutely appalling behaviour. And I think that he would be the worst possible person to be chairing a meeting at this council should you be incapacitated for any reason. I will vote for Councillor Quirk. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brody. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Councillor Pitcher.
Thank you, Chair, and congratulations upon your election. I'll come back to something that was said during the discussion around your election, which was the matter of experience. I'm the chairman of Wootton Parish Council, and for the last year, Councillor Lilly has been the Mayor of Ryde, the neighbouring authority. And I can't think of anyone more experienced to add that back up to you than someone that has been a mayor of a large town like that. So I'm supporting Councillor Lilly.
Thank you, Councillor Pitcher. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on anyone else nominated? No? Okay, so we go to the vote on that. So, shall we do a named vote? We'll do a named vote on this one as well, please.
Thank you, Chairman. As before, I'll read out your names as councillors, and if you could please indicate whether you are voting for Councillor Michael Lilly or Councillor Chris Quirk. Councillor PC Wilcox. Councillor Lilly, thank you. Councillor Adams.
Councillor Lilly.
Councillor Lilly, thank you. Councillor Andre.
Councillor Michael Lilly.
Councillor Lilly, thank you. Councillor Bacon.
Councillor Michael Lilly.
Councillor Lilly, thank you. Councillor Daw.
Councillor Lilly.
Councillor Lilly. Councillor Downer. Councillor Lilly, thank you. Councillor Fuller.
Councillor Michael Lilly.
Councillor Lilly, thank you. Councillor Jarman.
Councillor Lilly.
Councillor Lilly, thank you. Councillor Jones Evans.
Councillor Michael Lilly.
Councillor Lilly, thank you. Councillor Jordan.
Councillor Lilly.
Councillor Lilly, thank you. Councillor Lever.
Councillor Lilly.
Councillor Lilly, thank you. Councillor Lilly.
Councillor Lilly.
Thank you. Councillor Lilly. Councillor Love.
Councillor Lilly.
Councillor Lilly, thank you. Councillor Lucioni.
Councillor Lilly.
Councillor Lilly, thank you. Councillor Medland.
Councillor Lilly.
Councillor Lilly, thank you. Councillor Stevens.
Councillor Lilly.
Councillor Lilly, thank you. Councillor Garrett.
Councillor Michael Lilly.
Councillor Lilly, thank you. Councillor Pitcher.
Councillor Lilly.
Councillor Lilly, thank you. Councillor Quigley.
Councillor Lilly.
Councillor Lilly, thank you. Councillor Beston.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk, thank you. Obviously, Councillor Brady is not present. Councillor Churchman.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk, thank you. Councillor Drew.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk, thank you. Councillor Ellis.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk, thank you. Councillor Hastings.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk, thank you. Councillor Henry.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk, thank you. Councillor Mosdell.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk, thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk, thank you. Councillor Oliver.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk, thank you. Councillor Outlaw.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk, thank you. Councillor Peace.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk, thank you. Councillor Price.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk, thank you. And Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk, thank you. Councillor Redrup.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk, thank you. Councillor Robertson.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk, thank you. Councillor Spink.
Councillor Quirk.
Thank you. Councillor Quirk. Councillor Ward.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk. Councillor Critchison. Yes. Let's make the amendment then. Councillor Brody.
Councillor Quirk.
Thank you, Councillor Quirk, for Councillor Brody. Councillor Critchison.
Councillor Lilly.
Councillor Lilly, thank you. Should be 1, 2, 3, 6. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, the results of that are 20 votes for Councillor Lilly and 18 votes for Councillor Quirk. So Councillor Lilly wins that vote and will be Vice Chair. Congratulations. Invite Councillor Lilly to sign his acceptance and to take his chain of office.
I, Michael Lilly, having been elected to the office of Vice Chairman of the Isle of Wight Council, declare that I take the office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of it according to the best of my judgment and ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to say congratulations to Councillor Lilly.
Thank you.
And yes, I'd like to say thank you to all those that said, congratulated me on my position. And I should have said at the beginning that, strap yourselves in because this could be a bumpy ride, my first meeting. And I appreciate that you will all hopefully help me out with these things. So thank you. It's, getting to this point has been a challenge. So I'll carry on now with the next item, which is the minutes of the meeting. The previous meeting? Do we need to approve the minutes of the full council held on the 23rd of February 2022? So do I have a proposer? Councillor Jarman?
Chair, I propose that we approve the minutes as is. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
I'll second that.
Councillor Luciani. Thank you. And then item 4. Do I have to sign them first? Sorry. I'm just going to initial each page. Each page. Thank you very much. And then on to item 4, the declarations of interest. Is there any member that has any declarations of interest? No? Okay. And then we're moving on to item 5, to receive an official announcements from the chairman. And I believe that's me now. So I think I've read out my statement before. And we'll move straight on to item 6. So I don't think you need to hear any more from me until next time. So that I will move on to the leaders' annual report. So, Councillor Peter Wilcox, you ready, sir? Thank you.
Thank you and congratulations to you both. So here we are then, week 51 of the Alliance. Not that I'm counting, of course. I begin my report by thanking those people dedicated to sustaining the new normal for our island. My sincere and heartfelt thanks to each and every one of you. It was surprising to see how much had been achieved in the year. A year of much turmoil and noise around many issues on the island. As always, the long hours put in by the Cabinet, directors and the staff is unprecedented. My sincere thanks to them. COVID recovery is still a priority. We still, sadly, have residents passing away from COVID. My thoughts are with you. The lasting effect of COVID, with large numbers of mental health issues, will be further exacerbated by the poverty that is going to hit many of our residents within the next few months. I ask councillors to come together and to come forward to help and assist us and prioritise those residents that need us most. My report, as put before you, is extensive, and I will do my best to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Yeah, so I invite questions from councillors on the annual reports. We have 15 minutes for questions. Anybody want a question? Councillor Jarman.
Yes, thank you. Just a question to the leader. Leader, you've mentioned, I'm very pleased that you did, the impact of COVID and in particular the impact of the growing level of poverty. And we will all have heard the rather disturbing news that inflation has now risen to 9% in the UK, which will undoubtedly have an impact on every islander on this isle. I think we've all been aware of the stellar work to try and offset some of that work that has been done within the council itself, and that our business centre have been superb in their processing of COVID relief payments and also for relief payments to businesses on the island, which to many of them have been a lifeline. I wonder if you could inform us of the results of that effort to date and the disbursement of those funds to keep those critical island businesses alive. Thank you.
Well, I have to say our staff, again, have been absolutely outstanding in processing these payments that have actually been the lifeblood enabling island businesses to actually survive. It's been a truly momentous and massive team effort. I'm pleased to report that so far we have processed more than 21,000 payments to our local businesses. That in total is over £140 million to help keep our businesses and to keep the island going. I think it's a phenomenal achievement, and I absolutely think, you know, full praise to our staff that have got this on top of their normal working jobs to try and do this. So, yeah, 21,000 payments, Councillor Jarman, totalling over £140 million. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary to that, Councillor John?
Just to expand on it a little bit, because there are other sectors within that which are mentioned in your report, particularly the work which has been done to support people during this time with the college, and in terms of helping people into work within the island. The council has, of course, taken a very much a leadership role regarding the launch of apprenticeships, not least of all within our own ranks. And I wonder if you could elaborate on how many young people on our island the council's efforts have aided so far.
No supplementary questions. Separate question. Okay. So go on to Councillor Moster, or was it Councillor Brodie? Councillor Brodie is next, please.
Thank you, Chair. The leader referred to poverty about to hit us. I found that quite an interesting statement. I represent a ward, and I know other councillors represent wards where poverty and deprivation is intrinsic into the life of so many people. People of Pan and Barton, who I regularly attend the Health and Wellbeing Board to ask what this administration is going to do about poverty and deprivation in areas like Pan and Barton, and I hear nothing. I also understand that the government's £150 payment towards energy bills isn't exactly rushing through to people who are starting to receive the extortionate bills from the utility companies, who in my view should be suffering from a windfall tax yesterday rather than tomorrow. I'd like an answer as to when my residents can all expect the £150. I would like an answer as to when you're actually going to do something for Pan and Barton. I would also like to ask you about Howard House, the homeless hub that the previous administration secured the money for, which was opened under your administration, which is mismanaged in the extreme by the Salvation Army. I am fed up to the back teeth of having to raise matters with the housing manager responsible regarding clients there, having been somebody who supported the opening of this homeless hub over a year ago. So there's a number of questions there. They all relate to my own ward, and you may pull a face, but that's often the response, leader, whenever I ask you anything about Pan and Barton. But an answer for once would be appreciated. Thank you.
Would you clarify, Councillor, what was the question? Which one of those questions would you like answered?
Poverty in Pan and Barton.
Yes, I believe that is a good question. I think we've got an answer.
I think Councillor Love would like to respond to you. Councillor Brodie, Councillor Love.
Chair, point of order. I'd just like to clarify, this is the Leader's Annual Report, and it's members' questions on the Leader's Annual Report. Surely it is the responsibility of the Leader of the Council to respond to the report that she has submitted to full Council, rather than to farm it out to somebody who clearly fancied being Vice Chair rather than a Cabinet member not so long ago. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor is wishing to respond.
Yeah. Councillor.
Chair, I've raised a point of order. This is, and I'd ask you to consult with the monitoring officer, this is the Leader's Annual Report. It's not Carl Love's Annual Report. It is the Leader's. Now, the last I heard is Councillor Peter Wilcox is still clinging on as Leader of this Council. Thank you.
I believe Councillor Love is allowed to answer this question. I believe Councillor Love is allowed to answer this question. I believe Councillor Love is allowed to answer this question.
Of answering questions as Leader. It's about time she resigned. She is not up to the job. It's quite apparent.
Chair, I've been invited by the chair to take this question. Well, you're getting my answer, sir. Your behaviour is completely inappropriate. Again, throwing around accusations of all kinds is completely inappropriate.
Challenging you.
I am allowed to speak, sir. I want to respond to the question.
If you would answer the question, please.
I have spoken. So the Isle of Wight Council has a an anti-poverty group, which is an operation. I have spoken to Chris Ashman in the last few weeks, and in fact, even today, earlier today, I wrote to members of the press to tell them about what some of our thoughts and ideas are for the future, as I am equally concerned as everybody in this chamber is about the current crisis around energy and inflation and our economy. This council is going to step up with its anti-poverty group to address some of the issues that you are referring to. We will look at that closely. I recognise that poverty is here now. It has been here for a long time. It's not just suddenly arisen, but the events which have occurred in Ukraine have multiplied the impacts of poverty significantly, and we have to respond. And in order to do that, I have asked Chris Ashman and our Chief Executive today to step up that action and outcome so that we can work with our town and parish councils. We are all in this together. Every single one of you, I'd like to bet, has turned down their heating or made some adjustments today or in the last weeks as a result of what's happening. It will affect us all. We are all in it together, and we need to start looking creatively at ways of combating it. I am unhappy with the government, so in that matter we do agree with each other, Councillor Brodie, that their actions are allowing some of our richest companies to get richer, against which we should be top slicing them in order to compensate for what's happening nationally and move forward from there. We will look at local campaigns and local initiatives. Pan is a very important part of this island, but it is not the only area that's suffering from poverty.
Thank you, Councillor Love. Sorry, Councillor Moster.
Thank you, and I will try to be brief. I read with fascination the leader's report, and I'm quite fascinated that actually all that needed to be resolved, the problem was the floating bridge, for it to have no longer regular questions, was actually a change of administration. Hey, who would know that would solve all those problems? Regularly at full council, we would have people beating their drums for an update on the floating bridge, what was happening with it, why it wasn't working, etc. Clearly, change of administration has solved all those problems, but I went around there the other day and it definitely wasn't working. So could we have an update, please, on has it been miraculously mended, that it no longer is actually a point of issue for this council, or could I just have an update in writing? I don't mind, I just find it a bit of a miracle.
Thank you, Councillor Moster. Do you have an answer?
As I've been watching it on the little camera thing, and I can assure you it's been working. I've also got in touch with, there's a thing called Floaty Finder, which is a very peculiar name. A group of lads from the Isle of Wight decided to build a model that's been not working while the floating bridge was out having its refit. And so I've asked them to re-put that back because a lot of people use this Floaty Finder. So it is working at this current time. We are forcing the mediation to date, but as you know, solicitors and drag things out for as long as they possibly can because they're being paid. I don't know whether Councillor Jordan wishes to add anything.
Very happy to, Chair, if that's required under Councillor Brodie's new rules for this council. Very happy to say, of course, 4 years, Chair, that I have passed.
Point of order.
I would like to defend myself against the sort of comment. I'm raising an issue here. It didn't take up by from the monitoring officer because of Title 6 leaders annual report. Now, if I was in the chair, which I have been very pleased, I would expect all questions answered by the leader of the council.
I took advice, Councillor Brodie. Well, I took advice, Councillor Brodie, and I was told that they were allowed to answer those questions.
Sorry, it's my question, and I don't actually want to hear from Councillor Jordan. I was happy with the leader's answer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moster. I agree with you that we do need answers to that question. So thank you. I've got a
carry on.
No, I don't think we need your answer, Councillor Jordan. Thank you. We are going to carry on with my list of people. I've got Councillor Jones-Evans next on my list.
Thank you, and Chair, and again, congratulations from me. I was actually very interested in Councillor Jarman's question, Leader, regarding the apprenticeships. I don't know if you want me to just remind everyone what that was about, but the gist of it, if you got it, but for everyone else who may have forgotten, but given the success under the Alliance in reaching the government targets of the number of apprenticeships delivered within the council, would the Leader elaborate on how many young people of our island have benefited? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones-Evans. I'm pleased, really pleased actually, to report that the government targets for the number of apprenticeships in operation by the council have overachieved, yay, and can be considered to be a real success. Our annual target is 73 apprenticeships, but we have achieved an outturn figure of over 83. So it's really good news. You know, we constantly hear that there's issues with people trying to find staff for different positions. So to have 83 apprentices is absolutely phenomenal. And we know how our homegrowners are such dedicated people to us. We've seen how they achieve throughout the rest of the council, and their innovative ways of coming up with different things. So we're excited. So the apprenticeship scheme is led by Georgina Jones. Don't know where she is, but well, go Georgina. She's an excellent council officer in the workforce development, and who has worked with services to promote, source and possible these apprenticeships offers to our islanders. We're just absolutely delighted to have somebody that's so dedicated and that can bring in more and more apprenticeships. So yeah, sincere thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wilcox. I had Councillor Stevens down, but did you want a question, or can I go on to Councillor Garrett? I wasn't sure if you had your hand up or not.
I did, but I was going to try and save us all the pain that we went through earlier by saying if there is a problem with answering a question because there's more detail required than a written response is quite an issue. Thank you.
Thank you. We can go on to Councillor Garrett, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Brody is quite right in his questions to bring up the issues of poverty, and I've spoken on that. And I've been very pleased that the administration, for the large part, is fulfilled on those pledges. There are issues in which we have disagreed, but I'm having a very constructive dialogue with the leaders team and particularly Councillor Jarman around those issues. Question I would like to pick up, because Councillor Brody, of course, wasn't able to ask all of his questions, is about the £150 rebate that is being made. Leader, through you, Chair, Leader, I expect you will not have an exact figure as to how much is being paid out, but will you ensure that by the end of this week, all members of the council and the media are issued with a figure of how much has been paid out, what percentage that represents of payments to those people who qualify for that relief? And of course, use it as an opportunity to further remind people who are in bands A to D houses, if they haven't received it and do not pay by direct debit, that they must act quickly to get that money into their bank account. It's vital that they do so. So many of our people are actually facing double-digit inflation because they are in the bottom decile of the income bracket. But if the leader can give me that assurance,
yes,
that would be
I
great.
agree that we should have that information. Would that be able to have that?
Yes, Councillor Jarman has that on the top of his head, which I don't.
Thank you, Councillor Jarman.
I'm afraid I'm only able to give you an approximate figure as of this afternoon of 25,337 payments, a total of just over £3.8 million.
Thank you very much. So with the time up for the leaders' questions, we go on to item 7A, which is the review of political proportionality, alternative arrangements, appointments of committees, allocations of seats, nominations and appointments to committees, including chairs and vice chairs and constitutional issues. Can I hand that over to Mr. Potter?
Thank you, Chairman. This is the annual report in relation to the requirement to assess the political proportionality. Last time members have looked at it, there's been no change in terms of the political proportionality. So obviously I'd invite members to go with the recommendation to approve the current political proportionality situation. Before proceeding further, obviously members got the report in front of them, and one of the key elements of that report following any agreement on the political proportionality is the appointments of committees and members to particular positions on the committees, including chairs and vice chairs. Now, I think it might be prudent, as a matter for members assembled, maybe to have a short adjournment to ensure that all the nominations which members wish to put forward are put forward, so all members in the chamber have an opportunity to do so. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Potter. Councillor Brody.
Just a point of information. The Corporate Scrutiny Committee is sort of inverse proportionality. It isn't really. Are we going to get the opportunity to vote on that this year? Because I would like to vote against inverse proportionality.
Yes. Mr. Potter, you answer that question.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Brody.
alternative arrangements are actually on the agenda specifically in case members wanted to deal with things outside the rules on political proportionality. As I think has been already mentioned this evening, in actual fact, the figures work out anyway, so there isn't any sort of necessary requirement to alter the balance. The figures are allocated on political balance in terms of the scrutiny committees. So effectively, it is what it is. Now that I've obviously mentioned about alternative arrangements being on the agenda paper, clearly if members or individual members wanted to put forward a alternative arrangement beyond the allocation of seats put on the paper, then you can do. But obviously any alternative arrangements which individual members want to put forward, there is a requirement for unanimous agreement on it. Now, if I've read things correctly, and I may not have done, effectively the figures reflect the political proportionality, and it's really a matter of members deciding if they want to go with the existing figures for a corporate scrutiny committee or allocate different proportionality in terms of more to one group, less to another, or to an ungrouped situation. But I think sort of members are probably, and I'm putting my head in the noose here, I think members are probably satisfied with the current numbers, but if you're not, this is your opportunity to speak.
I've got Councillor Robertson next. Oh,
Because, I mean, this is an important point. You probably don't recognise it as such, but it is an important point.
okay.
It's up
quickly,
to
thank
you. I'll leave it and you can dig your hole right.
Councillor Robertson, would you like to speak on this?
Yes, on the adjournment point, certainly don't feel that you need to adjourn on our account. We're ready to present who we wish to nominate to committees and chairs and vice chairs, etc. So if there's no need to adjourn on the other side, certainly don't do it on our account.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Councillor.
Yeah, it's Councillor Mostow, and yeah, my point, I didn't realise Councillor Robertson put his hand up. My point as well is, can we just get on with it, please?
No adjournment is needed, so we can go straight on to voting on that. Councillor Robertson, do you want to speak on it?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Our proposal on this side of the chamber is that our nominations to the committees as they currently stand continue, so no changes to committee members. We do have a nomination to make in respect of Chair of Corporate Scrutiny and Chair of Planning. I think that's probably several different things in that.
Okay. Do we need an adjournment to discuss? Pass this over to Mr. Potter is going to.
Thank you, Chairman. The nominations in terms of the seats for the Conservatives, Councillor Robertson has outlined there's no change, etc. But obviously, when it comes to nominations in terms of the chair of corporate scrutiny and planning, I understand you want to put forward particular candidates. If I go through the lists of nominations for chairs and vice chairs, which I've got in front of me, if there's any sort of difference or gaps, please, anyone make your views clear. Appeals Committee, I've got a nomination for chair of the Appeals Committee being Councillor Ian Daw, which is the existing position. Are there any other sort of nominations for chair in relation to the appeals? In terms of vice chair,
Councillor Brody.
Are we allowed to make comments? For instance,
to
Yeah, perfectly happy to comment. Councillor Brody's absolutely right. I haven't rocked up once. My wife had a heart attack last year. I had 2 family members die, and one of my daughters was diagnosed with a fever condition, which has kept me away, as some of you know, from the chamber itself. But definitely from the appeals. So the vice committee was formed. Councillor Brody was decent enough to chair those. I actually offered my resignation of that this evening to the leader because I did feel that it's been tricky. And as well as the armed forces role, which actually is a voluntary role, it was a consideration that perhaps I might not be able to carry it forward. I'm willing to give it a crack. If I feel that I cannot, I will resign that position. But over the last 12 months, as well as Councillor Brody does know, there have been extenuating circumstances. It's not ideal, and life gets in the way sometimes. That's all I have to say on that.
thank you, Councillor. Councillor Robertson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Looking purely ahead, Councillor Daw, could you clarify, did you say you offered your resignation this evening from that position to the Chair? I think Councillor Daw's nodding. And it gives me some concern that, forget the past, looking to the future, Councillor Daw felt he should offer his resignation. That was presumably refused. I think if we could perhaps deal with that. Am I wrong? Okay.
If I may, Joe, Councillor Robertson, it was more of a thing of decency. I'm fully aware of my misgivings, I suppose, and non-performance in that regard. And one would not want to be the person that is not able to perform and move forward. You can't bring back dead people, so that's kind of done and dusted. There are 2 other issues to deal with. As I've said, if I cannot fulfil it, I'll throw my hat in. I've got no issue with that, and that's the conversation I had with the leader tonight. I think I can. If I cannot, I won't be doing it, and it's as simple as that.
Thank you, Councillor Daw. I think he's explained that he's had certain circumstances that have led to those absences, and confident that if he wants to carry on, then that is acceptable.
Chairman, thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Jordan?
Just a little bit of clarity. If we are to allow comments of that nature every time somebody's name is mentioned in this whole document here, we're going to be here till midnight and tomorrow morning, Chair. Do you want, Chair?
Yes. Councillor Brody. Councillor Brody. Well, I'm listening.
Yeah, just a quick point of order on that. I don't really feel I should have to pour out my personal life and circumstances in a public gallery with everybody else listening. But actually, just to get people and things moving on, sometimes you've got to do that. We could have had that conversation, Jeff, but we didn't. You could have asked me, and you know the circumstances around it, and I respect you. I've enjoyed your chairing over the last year. We could have had that conversation. It didn't be needed to be aired in a public gallery, did it?
Thank you, Councillor Daw. Yes, and I apologise that, no, I don't think we can respond on that. I'm going to move on. No, it's been answered.
In the Constitution, Chair, I have a right of personal explanation.
Which you have had an explanation.
Not to that. That is suggesting that I have attacked him unfairly. Now let's be
No, I don't think that's.
The winner of that group over there.
No, I don't think. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Councillor Brody. Thank you, Councillor Brody. That's finished now.
Chair.
Yes. Councillor Brody, thank you. I think you've made your point, and we're going to carry on with the rest of the list.
Thank you, Chairman. So on the floor, we have a nomination for Chairman of the Appeals Committee of Councillor Ian Daw. There is a Vice Chair position. I don't have it on my list. So is there a nomination for Vice Chair of Appeals Committee? From anyone on at the meeting?
Councillor PC Wilcox.
Sorry.
When there's two people at microphones on, can't speak. Actually, I'm quite happy to nominate Councillor Jeff Brodie because he's been vice chair. He declines. Okay, thank you very much. In which case, I nominate Councillor Jonathan Bacon, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll continue. So just to recap, the chair nomination is Ian Daw and vice chair nomination, Councillor Bacon. The Appointments and Employment Committee, it's Councillor Laura PC Wilcox as leader of the council, position in the constitution as leader. The vice chair of Appointments and Employment Committee, can I confirm who the vice chair is?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Joe Robertson.
Thank you very much indeed. So we have a vice chair of nominated for Councillor Robertson, who's willing to accept. So thank you both for that. Audit Committee, we have Councillor Andrew Garrett as chairman and the Audit Committee Vice Chairman nomination is Councillor Michael Lilly, which I think is a situation of the status quo.
Mr Potter, sorry, could I just come in? We are replacing Councillor Ian Stevens with Councillor Lucioni on that one, please.
Actual committee.
Yes, that's on the committee itself. I think we'll make sure we've got that list of ordinary appointments to committees so members are aware exactly of those appointments. So we'll just get those printed.
We can do that changes in a moment before
Yes,
we circulate.
Absolutely. Our colleague's just going to get them printed and with your permission, Chair, if I continue to deal with the chairs and vice chair appointments.
Robertson?
Possibly out of sequence, Chair, but on the point of Audit Committee, I really do hope the Alliance are prepared to remove all Cabinet members from that committee. It is in the guidance. I do not see why Cabinet members need to sit on that committee. There are enough of them across the chamber who are willing to dish out roles. Well, why don't two non-Cabinet members replace the Cabinet members? Thank you.
I believe that's their choice too. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. If I am reappointed to the chair of the Audit Committee, it is something quite a few people know already. I've taken the decision that I will not be sitting on any Scrutiny Committee. That's in line with SIP for guidance as well. And I would echo at that point that it is ideal that in the end that Cabinet members do not serve on the Audit Committee. I hope, though, under my chairmanship, it has been shown that they have gained no advantage from that. In fact, they've probably been the most difficult customers in a way in terms of asking questions, searching questions on that. But it will be ideal if all of us who are appointed there don't have this potential conflict under the SIP for guidance. But I wanted to bring out that point specifically about myself. I reflected very much on that and felt it appropriate not to sit on a Scrutiny Committee, much as I love them.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. That was really useful for clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Moving on to the Corporate Scrutiny Committee, piece of paper in front of me, I have a nomination from the Alliance Group for Councillor Richard Quigley as chairman. Is a nomination from the Conservative or any other side?
I nominate Councillor Joe Robertson.
Do we have a second of that? Thank you, Councillor Churchman.
So at the moment we have obviously two nominations for chair of Corporate Scrutiny Committee. We've got Councillor Richard Quigley and Councillor
We need a seconder
Joe
from
Robertson. Yes.
Yes,
So,
Councillor Peter Wilcox.
thank you. So in order to move things on, I think if we deal with your indulgement, if we deal with the election of chair of Corporate Scrutiny Committee. So the two nominations, both seconded. And it's Councillor Richard Quigley or Councillor Joe Robertson. And if I do the usual in terms of readout.
I think we'll do this as a named vote.
Are we going to be endorsing the candidates, or we're just going straight to the
Oh, no.
votes?
Straight to the vote.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, Councillor Brady. No, I think that's a fair point.
Right, I indicated earlier that I do have issues with this committee and its political proportionality being reversed, because it isn't in reality. There are 4 Alliance members, 4 Conservative members, Councillor Quigley and Cameron Palin, who just happens to be a member of the political party which you're a member of, Chairman. And so we can guess which way he tends to vote on the Corporate Scrutiny Committee. I think the evidence before us tonight and in recent meetings is that Councillor Quigley is in the pocket of the Alliance. He is not an opposition member. He has proved that he does not know how to oppose the Alliance. And it is imperative, in my view, that if you're going to have reverse proportionality, that you have an opposition member. Now, the best person for that would be me, but I'm not going to get that in a million years. So therefore, the only other opposition members are the vast majority of the opposition over here, my friends in inverted commas from the Conservative Party, and I will be supporting Councillor Robertson. Thank you.
Thank you for your opinion, Councillor Brody. Do I ask others for? Councillor Drew, would you like to speak on that?
Thank you very much, Chair. My reason for endorsing Joe is twofold. I've known Joe for a great number of years, despite the fact that for many of those years, I was a very stalwart member of the Labour Party and an active campaigner. Joe was the type of interlocutor that I could have a robust, open debate. And I think he would bring those qualities as chair of corporate scrutiny. Now, I appreciate on the other side of the chamber that there will be concerns about nominating somebody who is robust and forensic, and that is not in any way to impugn Councillor Quigley, who is an excellent chair. But I do firmly believe that we need to show to the public at large that we are open and transparent. I think it is imperative to remember at this meeting last year, there was a pledge that the main opposition party would be able to field a nomination for corporate scrutiny, and that would be endorsed by the Alliance. I appreciate this is a political situation. It's something, however, which is vital. And I would absolutely endorse Joe as a candidate because of his myriad qualities, but also, and as Councillor Love said very eloquently earlier on, we are all in this together. And I think the most vital thing is for us to be able to show to the public that those ideals which we subscribe to and which were endorsed by the electorate in May of last year are upheld. And for that reason, I have no hesitation in recommending Joe. Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Councillor Drew. Do we have some? We'll go straight to the vote. We'll go straight to the vote. There's no other information from the other side. I think, yeah, if we do named votes. Sorry, I'm not very good on this. Please. No, just I think a named vote on this one as well, please. Crystal.
Thank you, Chairman. As usual, I'll read out councillors' names individually. If you could please indicate this is for the chairmanship of the Corporate Scrutiny Committee, and we have 2 nominations, Councillor Richard Quigley and Councillor Joe Robertson. Councillor PC Wilcox.
Councillor Richard Quigley.
Councillor Quigley, thank you. Councillor Adams.
Councillor Richard Quigley.
Quigley, thank you. Councillor Andre.
Councillor Quigley.
Councillor Quigley, thank you. Councillor Bacon.
Councillor Richard Quigley.
Councillor Quigley, thank you. Councillor Dorr.
Councillor Richard Quigley.
Thank you. Councillor Downer. Councillor Quigley, thank you. Councillor Fuller.
Councillor Richard Quigley.
Thank you. Councillor Quigley. Councillor Jarman.
Councillor Quigley.
Thank you, Councillor Quigley. Councillor Jones-Evans.
Councillor Richard Quigley.
Councillor Quigley, thank you. Councillor Jordan.
Councillor Quigley.
Quigley. Councillor Lever.
Councillor Quigley.
Thank you. Councillor Lilly.
Councillor Quigley.
Thank you. Councillor Love.
Councillor Quigley.
Thank you. Councillor Lucioni.
Councillor Quigley.
Thank you. Councillor Medland.
Councillor Quigley.
Thank you. Councillor Stevens.
Councillor Quigley.
Thank you. Councillor Garrett.
Councillor Quigley.
Councillor Pitcher.
Councillor Quigley.
Councillor Quigley.
Councillor Quigley.
Thank you. Councillor Beston.
Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. Councillor Brading's not present. Councillor Churchman.
Councillor Robertson.
Robertson, thank you. Councillor Drew.
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis.
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you. Councillor Hastings.
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you. Councillor Henry.
Councillor Robertson.
Councillor Mosdell.
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver.
Councillor Robertson.
Councillor Outlaw.
Councillor Robertson.
Councillor Peace.
Councillor Robertson.
Councillor Price.
Councillor Robertson.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Robertson.
Councillor Redrup.
Councillor Robertson.
And Councillor Robertson.
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you. Councillor Spink.
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you. Councillor Ward.
Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. Councillor Brodie.
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you. And Councillor Christensen.
Councillor Quigley. Thank you. The result is 20 votes for Councillor Quigley and 18 for Councillor Robertson. So Councillor Quigley takes that position.
Thank you, Chairman. And if we move on, please, to the position of Vice Chair for Corporate Scrutiny Committee. I've got a nomination on the floor from, in terms of Councillor Chris Quirk being Vice Chair of Corporate Scrutiny Committee. Are there any other nominations for that position, please? No. Therefore, we can deal with that in terms of unanimous vote if members indicate that that's their affirmation of that particular position. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Chair, I'm still entirely unclear how you're proceeding with this, to be frank. You've got a variety of people have been put forward earlier on that I don't want to vote for. I hope we're not going to just have a collective vote on all these positions other than the sort of one we've just had on corporate scrutiny, because I do not want to vote for certain people. I'm happy to vote for Chris. You know, I've got a problem there.
Agreed that if they haven't, it's being voted on each position.
Sorry?
Each position is being voted on as we go through.
Is it? Well, I didn't get an opportunity to stick my hand up. When did that happen?
If there's no other nomination.
No, that's not. No, you can still have the opportunity to vote against somebody, Chair. This is not, you know, Stalin, Soviet Russia. You know, by acclaim. You know, I want the opportunity to vote
on that
against.
issue. I will get clarification.
The Green Party may be like that, but it certainly isn't my politics.
Thank you.
Point of order, Chair. If Councillor Brodie doesn't like any of the people proposed, perhaps he could propose somebody else.
Thank you, Councillor Pitcher. Councillor Lever. Oh.
There we go. Sorry. I thought I understood that Mr. Pass said at the beginning that if you disagreed with anything that we're going through, you would raise it at the time and then that would trigger.
Yes, I believe that was the process and that we are following that process, that there isn't another nomination.
But therefore, am I able to have recorded votes against people as in accordance with the Constitution? I really think she's
I
been
will ask for
mishandled
clarification.
really
So we have
badly,
adjournment while I
as I
ask for
anticipated
clarification.
it would be
I
before
can
the
have
meeting.
adjournment. Yes, we are having adjournment for
You're really
10 minutes. While
mishandling
I,
it, Chair, I'm afraid.
thank you.
You know what I'm like. You know what I'm like. I was kind of you. Yeah. No,
I think we're all back in, so we can carry on. Ms Potter.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we just lost one councillor, but I think,
We're going to start again. Mr Potter, thank you.
thank you, Chairman. We now move swiftly on to the Harbour Committee. The nomination I have in front of me is Councillor Phil Jordan, and this is under the Constitution in terms of his position as Cabinet Member for Infrastructure. Is there a Vice Chairman nomination, please?
Chair, oh, whoever. Councillor Julie Jones-Evans, please.
Any other nominations for Vice Chair besides Councillor Julie Jones-Evans?
Seconder for Julie Jones-Evans, Councillor Evans. Councillor Luciani. Seconder.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So we have nomination for Vice Chair of the Harbour Committee, Councillor Julie Jones-Evans. I don't see any other nominations put forward, and it has been seconded.
Councillor Luciani, yes, second, sir.
So in the absence of any other nominations or objections, no dissent in the room, then that goes through as appointment as Vice Chair to the Harbour Committee. The next on the list I've got in front of me is the Investigating and Disciplinary Committee, with the Chairman being Councillor Debbie Andre, and the Vice Chair nomination I've got in front of me is Councillor Warren Drew. Now, is there any alternatives in terms of, no, we're all happy with the Chair and Vice Chair nominations? Okay, again, unless there's any sort of dissent, then it's affirmation of the whole meeting. Thank you. Moving on to the Licensing Committee, Councillor Darrell Pitcher as Chairman and Councillor Steve Hastings as Vice Chairman. Again, if no dissent in the room, then that goes through affirmation. Pension Fund Committee, Councillor Chris Jarman, Chairman, and Councillor Andrew Garrett as Vice Chairman. And again, unless there are any nominations or dissent, then those will go through. And moving on to the Planning Committee, the nominations I've got in front of me at the moment for the Planning Committee Chair is Councillor Peter Spink, and the Vice Chair, Councillor Warren Drew. Are there any other nominations, please?
Thank you. I'd like to nominate Councillor Warren Drew as Chairman.
And I, for reasons that I've explained regarding my nomination as Chair of Planning Committee, I explained before the meeting I don't propose to go into those reasons. I said that I didn't need to at this meeting, but I declined the nomination.
Are there any other nominations? Or Councillor Peter Wilcox?
Can I nominate Councillor John Medland, please?
Thank you. That's proposed and seconded.
Right, so just to recap, we're on the Chair of the Planning Committee. Councillor Spink's made clear that he's not standing for Chair. We have two nominations on the floor at the moment for Chair. That's Councillor Warren Drew and Councillor John Medland. Is that correct?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Matt Price.
As I say.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. And is that seconded for Vice Chair?
That's for Vice Chair. Can we, yeah, can you just, so we're clarifying that Councillor Brodie is nominating Councillor Price for Vice Chair. He doesn't want to.
Okay, so if we just deal with the chairmanship first, so just to recap, Councillor Warren Drew has been nominated and Councillor John Medland's been nominated. So as per before, if I just quickly run through, Silly Chair.
So, no.
Chairman,
Councillor
could I
Price?
just say a couple of words with regards to my nomination? Is that okay?
Yes, I think it's important.
So I'm talking about nomination of chairman for the planning committee. Can I speak on that at this stage?
Yes.
I can, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Well, Councillor Drew would be an excellent chairman. He's both organised and capable. He knows the detail. There is no doubt at all that Warren would be the right man for this job. And I really do feel, looking at how the chairman positions are being filled tonight, that Warren deserves, and our group deserves, in the spirit of open and transparency and inclusion across the chamber, he deserves some support across the chamber. I have no problem with John Medland at all, but I feel that it would be a wise decision for this administration and some of our opposition members across the chamber to support my nomination. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Councillor Mazda?
Yeah, can I just speak for Councillor Drew, please? I'm actually quite shocked that we aren't all united on this, because I know for a fact that the leader of the council at planning meetings has listened to Councillor Drew and has felt that he has been fair, open, honest. He is incredibly eloquent. I don't think, people who hear him speak this evening heard how well he speaks. We have got a difficult time coming up in front of us, and we need somebody who is incredibly strong, incredibly balanced, and also really fair. And actually, this political posturing, and we're saying who we're going to put in place, we should all agree on Councillor Drew. And I'm actually surprised that we can't and we haven't. So however much you grin and shake on the other side of the chamber, at the end of the day, we've all listened to him planning and we've all got respect for him.
Thank you, Councillor Mazda. Councillor Jones-Evans?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for allowing me to speak. And just was so disappointed to hear that Councillor Spink didn't want to take his nomination, because I've, again, been very impressed with him speaking at planning committee and other committees he attends. He always does a lot of the research, the reading, and asks very, very pertinent questions. So, but putting that to one side, because he doesn't want to take this very important role on, I'll put my disappointment to one side and then go on to the nomination from our leader, Councillor John Medland, who I've served on this council with for, must be going to our 9th year now. John is a very, very thorough person. He does the research, he thinks about things, he's very balanced and articulate, and I know that he will give this role his all and give his considerable experience as being a councillor and a member of the planning committee, and I think this is exactly the right person for this role at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Robertson?
Thank you, Chair. I echo everything that's been said about the merits of Councillor Drew to be the chair of planning. I just want to also make the point, and it's nothing against Councillor Medland at all, but as we are considering the island planning strategy, I think it's remarkable that an administration that is signed up to pushing the island planning strategy through are seeking to appoint to the chair of planning someone who has spoken so clearly against it. And it's no criticism of Councillor Medland's view, but it's simply not credible that this administration and the cabinet member for planning are really behind the island planning strategy if they are backing Councillor Medland in the chair of planning. And could I also say, reiterating a point I made earlier, that at some point the public are going to twig that the independent councillor they voted for is not very independent, and they simply cannot tolerate anyone else other than their political group nominating to a chair of committee of this council. And the voters will notice. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. I think we did put up the chair from the opposition party.
It was your nomination. It was the Alliance nomination. An excellent chair, but it's an Alliance nomination. And I have met with the leader of the council twice in the last few weeks to try and seek an agreement here. And I put forward Councillor Drew's name, and she offered no name back. She did not offer Councillor Medland. She did not offer Councillor Spink. We learned about Councillor Spink very recently, and Councillor Medland only in this meeting. If she was committed to working together, why did she not share her nomination with us, and we could have tried to reach an agreement as we did for her?
Councillor Brody.
Thank you, Chair. I think barring the leader of the council and the cabinet, I suspect this is probably the most important role to appoint tonight, particularly the situation we're in terms of the island planning strategy. And I will be interested to hear Councillor Fuller's comments, which are no doubt coming up afterwards, because he must be very concerned about who we put in this position. I would have liked Councillor Jones-Evans. I would like Councillor Price to be chair of planning, but he's got enough on his plate and he's declined it. I don't know Warren very well, but he's struck me over the past year as an immensely intelligent young man. I'm sorry if I patronise you there, Warren, but you are young compared to me. An intelligent young man who does a lot of work in preparation for planning and is extremely articulate, and he sounds quite posh compared to me, actually, but you know, that's probably his background. I'm deeply concerned that John Medland has been nominated by the administration, because I thought they were serious about the island planning strategy, about the delivery, affordable homes for islanders, about recognising that sometimes you have to build on greenfield. And I'm looking at you, Paul, very clearly here, very clearly, Paul, because you're the cabinet member. Is this really the sort of chair of planning we need on this council? I've named 3 councillors in a question to the leader that I have serious concerns about on planning. Consistently oppose national and existing local policy. And if he was a full member of the planning committee now, I would have probably ended up in him and Councillor Medland as well. They are, I think Councillor Quigley said in the debate we had last November, NIMBYs. There are a number of them. They pursue planning decisions that largely have been predisposed to, if not predetermined. They are populist. They vote purely and simply on what the small minority are demanding. And I think that's very worrying. Warren Drew would be, in my view, probably an effective chair. As I say, I can't have Councillor Price. Probably be happy to go back to Councillor Quirk as well. And from your group, the Alliance group, I don't think Councillor Lucioni has really got a head round it yet. But the rest of them, I have no confidence in terms of delivering what you have said in your corporate plan. I think you need to think very carefully about who you've nominated. This goes against everything that you've said to the main opposition group regarding planning. And I would hope Paul and Julie, as the economy and regeneration person, are going to vote sensibly tonight and not just on political lines.
Thank you,
Councillor
Brody.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Fuller, please.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brody, for your words. My view on this is that it would have been great to have had Councillor Spink. Councillor Spink has crossed swords with me on many occasions in the last year or so, and I've actually enjoyed it. It's been very good, and sometimes good planning is properly scrutinised, and I can only bow my hat to Councillor Spink. I've very much supported your nomination, Councillor Spink, and it's a crying shame that you have not received the support to be able to do that. I would love to see you as the chairman of the planning committee. That said, I think scrutiny is important for the work that I do. And I know that Councillor Medland has scrutinised me quite a lot in the past, as has you, Councillor Spink. So you've been both very, very effective in your scrutiny of my work and certainly the work that I'm undertaking in trying to get the Island Plan adopted. That said, we do need a strong chairman of the Planning Committee. We need somebody with experience. We need somebody that is prepared to go out, talk to developers, go out and talk to residents and listen to what people are saying. And I think this is quite an imperative role that you play when you are chairman of the Planning Committee. You have to look at things in a fair, rational and reasonable way. I have no doubt that Councillor Medland could do that, and I would hope that he would step up to the plate in that role. I'm fairly certain that he will, and that for that reason I will be supporting Councillor Medland. I think Councillor Drew is also excellent, but the one worry that I have with Councillor Drew is that Councillor Drew has been a member of the Planning Committee for 1 year. He has not got the experience, and I think he is shaping up to be a very, very good member of this council and also a very effective member of the Planning Committee. And I would support him in that role. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Can I have Councillor Churchman next? Do you wish to comment?
Is it my turn?
Yes, it is. I think
Thank
people
you,
on your
Chair.
side of.
I would like to support Councillor Drew. I've been on and off planning since 2005, and the one thing I was always told, it is a non-political body. I have voted with opposition colleagues and voted against opposition colleagues. Both Councillor Brodie, for example, supported my motion regarding the oil at Arreton Down. So to me, planning is very much a non-political event, and this is told to us quite regularly. And at this point of time, the government themselves have not produced the white paper that Michael Gove has been talking about. It's in the pipeline, so we're not sure what is going to happen. And the one thing that I think gives Councillor Drew an edge over my friend John is the fact he is a lawyer. And I think at this point in time, we really do need the legal expertise for this job. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like? Councillor Medland, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to say anything initially, but I think a few points are raised. I'd like to just quickly make a point that my name didn't appear until today. It has been in the ring for some time. I've been long considering this role. In the last year in particular, I found myself quite immersed in planning and become quite had to learn a great deal about it, and I'm very concerned about the decisions we are making. But I can see that from things that I've said, that there's a fear that the expressions that I've made in my role as a ward councillor could be seen as being antagonistic towards the draft plan, but it is a draft plan. I see once we have a definite policy, which we don't at the moment, then of course my role as chairman is to implement that policy. That's absolutely clear. That's what the role is about. I've been a councillor for 9 years, so I think I've got some experience, and I feel this is an incredibly difficult role. I'm not taking this on lightly, but I feel it has to be done, and I'm determined to try and do it to the best of my ability.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on this? No, I think I was just going to make a comment as well, that I think it is really important. This is one of the most important roles in the public eye, and I think we've got to make the right decision because people are looking for change for our planning issues that we have here, and we need to choose somebody that will look at it from all different angles, and I think Councillor Medland does have that outlook on it, so I'll be supporting him. So do we go to the vote now, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, we have, as you heard, 2 nominations for the Chair of Planning Committee, Councillor Medland and Councillor Drew. As before, I will read out individual councillors' names, And if you could please indicate who you'd like to vote for if on these two nominations, or as has been pointed out before, if you don't want to vote for any of the nominations, please indicate as well. Councillor PC Wilcox.
Councillor John Medland.
Thank you. Councillor Adams.
Councillor Medland.
Thank you. Councillor Andre.
Councillor Medland.
Thank you. Councillor Bacon.
Councillor Medland.
Councillor Dorr.
Councillor Medland.
Councillor Downer. Councillor Fuller.
Councillor John Medland.
Councillor Jarman.
Councillor Medland.
Councillor Jones Evans.
Councillor John Medland.
Councillor Jordan.
Councillor Medland.
Councillor Lever.
Councillor Medland.
Councillor Lilly.
Councillor Medland.
Councillor Love.
Councillor Medland.
Councillor Lucioni.
Councillor Medland.
Councillor Medland.
Councillor Medland. Thank you.
Councillor Stevens.
Councillor Medland.
Councillor Garrett.
Councillor Medland.
Councillor Pitcher.
Councillor Medland.
Councillor Quigley.
I still want to vote for Councillor Spink. Councillor Medland.
Councillor Medland, is that right? Thank you. Councillor Beston.
Councillor Drew.
Drew. Councillor Brady is not present. Councillor Churchman.
Councillor Drew.
Thank you. Councillor Drew.
Councillor Drew.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis.
Councillor Drew.
Thank you. Councillor Hastings.
Councillor Drew.
Thank you. Councillor Hendry.
Councillor Drew.
Councillor Mostrel.
Councillor Drew.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
Councillor Drew.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver.
Councillor Drew.
Councillor Outlaw, I think, is left. Councillor Peace.
Councillor Drew.
Councillor Price.
Councillor Drew.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Drew.
Councillor Redrup.
Councillor Drew.
Councillor Robertson.
Councillor Drew.
Councillor Spink.
Councillor Drew.
Councillor Ward.
Councillor Drew.
Thank you. Councillor Brodie.
Councillor Drew.
And Councillor Critchison.
Councillor Medland.
Thank you.
The votes are Councillor Medland 20, Councillor Drew 17. So Councillor Medland takes that position.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, that now leaves the Vice Chair position. The nomination I have in front of me at the moment is Vice Chair is Councillor Warren Drew. Are there any other nominations from the floor? Nope. So in the absence of any dissent, then affirmation that Councillor Warren Drew will serve as Vice Chair on the Planning Committee. So congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now, with your indulgement, Chair, the Policy and Scrutiny Committee for Children's Services, I've got Councillor Richard Quigley as Chairman and Councillor Joe Lever as Vice Chairman. Are there any other nominations at all? Again, in the absence of any dissent, then those nominations are affirmed by the members present tonight. Moving on to the Policy and Scrutiny Committee for Health and Social Care. Again, we have, I think, the status quo. Councillor John Nicholson as Chairman and Councillor Michael Lilly as Vice Chairman. Are there any other nominations from the floor or indeed any dissent? No, in that case, oh, sorry, Councillor.
Councillor Nicholson.
Can I just say that in my view, this is the most important unseen committee unseen from the public point of view on the council, and it takes far more than 1 year. It takes far more than one term to build up a relationship with health partners, to gain their trust, and gain their respect. I mean, I'm just a bloke off the street. What do I know about health? But I've managed to do that with the support of people across the floor, because I'm not political. I use people who, like, I said, like Michael, my vice chair, who are able to contribute. So thank you very much for continuing that nomination.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. I would like to say that, I've sat on your committee and really appreciate the efforts you've put into that. It's well run, and I do appreciate that you've made those links with groups. Councillor Love, would you like to speak?
Thank you. And I would wholly support Councillor Nicholson. He has done a fantastic job in very difficult situations, and we've still got a lot to deal with yet as we move forward. And I want to thank him for agreeing to stand. And I very much look forward to continuing to work with you.
Councillor Fuller.
Thank you. I want to say something nice to John. So well done, John. I'm glad you've taken up the nomination. I think you're very well thought of across the aisle and across the chamber, and I'm very, very pleased to support your nomination. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Councillor Lilly.
Can I just endorse yourself? It's been an honour to actually be your vice chair for some time. And it is a very, very important committee. And I think we've actually built an incredible rapport with the different services. And I think we've done a good service to this community, fighting causes like dentistry, mental health, and a variety of others. And I think it's an honour to continue that long journey with you.
Thank you. If we continue. Potter, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Moving now on to the Policy and Scrutiny Committee for Neighbourhoods and Regeneration. I have in front of me a nomination of Councillor John Medland as Chairman and Councillor Joe Lever as Vice Chairman.
No. There's a change. Councillor Peter Wilcox.
Yeah, because of Councillor Medland's role in planning, we are proposing to put Councillor Joe Lever as Chair of the Neighbourhoods and Regeneration, and we nominate Vice Chair John Medland. Thank you.
Councillor Robertson.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Beston.
Councillor Brodie.
I just refer members of the council to the leaders' report, page 17, third paragraph. We implemented our commitments of democracy and openness and accountability by reintroducing reverse proportionality to all scrutiny meetings, and supported the appointment of chairs of these meetings drawn from those that are not part of the alliance. Well, apart from the fact that's factually a lie, because Karen Lucioni has chaired that Policy and Scrutiny Committee for the last year, once again, we see the dual standards of the alliance and putting forward people from their group to chair a Policy and Scrutiny Committee. When are these people going to show some shame? When are these people going to show some ethics? Because frankly, it's appalling. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brodie. Councillor Robertson?
Could I speak to the nomination? I want to.
Yes, please.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
Thank you. I have to say, it does seem to be becoming farcical, the lengths the Alliance will go to ensure a group of 18 democratically elected councillors don't get a single nomination, a nomination we decide. Councillor Beston would make a very good chair of the Policy and Scrutiny Committee. He's been on this council for 5 years. The issue of experience has been raised by the Alliance just now in relation to chair of planning. they weren't too bothered about the issue of experience when we were talking about chair of the council. So may I suggest they're in a experience mood right now, and that Councillor Beston has the required experience to deliver to this role. It's no criticism of Councillor Lever, but he's been on the council for a relatively short period of time. I'm not sure there's anything much more for me to say than that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to speak? Then we need some seconders as well. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. I've been on this council for quite a time, and to meet someone like Joe Lever, young, enthusiastic, thirst for knowledge, and someone who's even-handed, is a revelation. And I'd just like to say that I will be voting in favour of Councillor Lever. I've heard so many lectures from the other side of the chamber tonight. Let's hope they get it out of their system. And when we get our next council meeting, we calm down and we move on and take a leaf out of someone like Councillor Joe Lever's book. Thank you.
Councillor Ward next.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't think it's any secret that the Bay Area is the area most in need of regeneration. I was actually very surprised to learn at tail end of last week that we are a key regeneration area. And because of that, I've worked with Mike for several years, many years. He's well known in the Bay Area. He knows what the problems are. And I think we couldn't have a better candidate, quite frankly. You know, it is horses for courses. And Mike is a horse. Thank you. I will certainly vote for him.
Thank you. Councillor Moster.
Thank you. I'm going to have to say this because otherwise, when I go home tonight, my father will be haunting me. I've sat here this evening and I've listened to, can't vote for him because he's not got enough experience. We're going to vote for her because she's a fresh face. We've now got another one who's a fresh face but not got the experience. At the end of the day, there are decisions made in here that feels like it's game playing. And how, sorry, did you say something, Debbie? So I do have, oh, sorry. So Councillor Andre, sorry, I didn't realise why you were laughing. When I was referring to my father who passed away while he was a serving county councillor. But if you find that funny, I'm not quite sure where the joke is. I just don't like to watch when really good people are actually, it just feels really sad to me that the arguments for one person is not the arguments for the same. So yes, Councillor Stevens, I agree. Let's meet next meeting, move on. But this meeting does feel like game playing. Thank you. And I'm entitled to my opinion, Councillor Andre.
Thank you very much. Is there any other comments? I would just add my own that I think each individual area needs different people to it, and I think we've all got a lot of skills in this room that we can use, and I think going forward hopefully we will do that and make the right decisions. So I need a seconder for Joe Lever, please. Councillor Jones Evans, and I need a seconder for Councillor Beston, please. Councillor Quirk. Thank you. And now we can move to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is for the vote for the Chair of Policy and Scrutiny Committee for Neighbourhoods and Regeneration. Two nominations for Chair, Councillor Lever and Councillor Beston. So if you could please indicate which of those candidates you wish to vote for, or indeed not, as the case may be. Councillor PC Wilcox, please.
Councillor Joe Lever.
Thank you. Councillor Adams.
Councillor Lever.
Thank you. Councillor Andre.
Councillor Lever.
Councillor Bacon.
Councillor Joe Lever.
Councillor Dorr.
Councillor Joe Lever.
Councillor Downer. Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
Councillor Joe Lever.
Councillor Jarman.
Councillor Joe Lever.
Thank you. Councillor Jones Evans.
Councillor Joe Lever.
Thank you. Councillor Jordan.
Councillor Lever.
And Councillor Lever.
Councillor Lever.
Thank you. Councillor Lilly.
Councillor Lever.
Thank you. Councillor Love.
Councillor Lever.
Councillor Lucioni.
Councillor Lever.
Councillor Medland.
Councillor Lever.
Councillor Stevens.
Councillor Lever.
Councillor Garrett.
Councillor Lever.
Councillor Pitcher.
Councillor Lever.
Thank you. I understand Councillor Quigley is not present. Councillor Beston.
Councillor Beston.
Thank you. And Councillor Brady is not present. Councillor Churchman.
Councillor Beston.
Councillor Drew.
Councillor Beston.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis.
Councillor Beston.
Councillor Hastings.
Councillor Beston.
Thank you. Councillor Henry.
Councillor Beston.
Thank you. Councillor Mostel.
Councillor Beston.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
Councillor Beston.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver.
Councillor Beston.
Thank you. Councillor Outlaw, I think, has left. Councillor Peace.
Councillor Beston.
Councillor Price.
Councillor Beston.
Thank you. Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Beston.
Thank you. Councillor Redrup.
Councillor Beston.
Councillor Robertson.
Councillor Beston.
Thank you. Councillor Swink.
Councillor Beston.
Thank you. Councillor Ward.
Councillor Beston.
Thank you. Councillor Brodie.
Councillor Beston.
Thank you. And Councillor Richardson, please.
Councillor Lever.
Thank you.
Councillor Lever has 19 votes and Councillor Beston has 17. So Councillor Lever takes that position. Okay, I think that brings us to the end of that section. Oh, Vice Chair of that, sorry, Vice Chair of that position as well.
Yes, at the moment, the nomination I have from the Alliance Group is for Vice Chair is John Medland. Is there any other nomination for Vice Chair of the Policy and Scrutiny Committee for Neighbourhoods and Regeneration, please? No?
Is there any more?
No?
No.
Okay, so in the absence of any dissent, then obviously by affirmation of the meeting, the Vice Chair is Councillor John Medland. And through you, Chair, brings me on to the appointments of the members for committees. Members will have a circulator list in front of them. I will reiterate what Councillor Robertson has kindly said earlier in the meeting, that all the Conservative existing nominations are carried forward. So there's no change in that. So please read the document which has been circulated as if the entries relate to the status quo for the Conservative group. Those are the wishes of the Conservative group. And in relation to explanation for members present, the Council is obliged to implement the wishes of political groups as expressed. And obviously, again, in terms of the Alliance Group's wishes, the committees, they are on the document circulated this evening. I think there is a point of clarity in relation to the Harbour Committee with Councillor Julie Jones obviously being a permanent member of the Harbour Committee. But subject to that a slight update in the document circulated and reading the Conservatives' nominations as before, I think you have the wishes expressed by both political groups. In relation to the ungrouped members, again, I understand that the wishes are expressed on the document which has been circulated. If I have misunderstood any of that, could you please indicate? Otherwise, that is the situation in terms of the wishes expressed by all councillors. So again, unless anyone wants to speak on any of those issues, then
We have 5 minutes to go through the list. Would everyone else like?
Sorry, Chair, can you just clarify what was?
I think we're just having a minute to double check the positions to make sure they are all correct. Councillor Pitcher.
While we're just taking a moment, Chair, I'd just like to apologise on behalf of Councillor Quigley, who's appears to have had to leave the meeting. He got a message. I think it may be a personal issue. He's had to leave.
Thank you,
Councillor
Councillor Pitcher.
Quigley
Yes,
left the meeting.
Councillor Quigley is left due to a personal issue. Thank you. Okay, we are satisfied with the entries on that committee's paper.
through you, Chairman, if all groups and the ungrouped are happy, so I think Councillor Brodie, Chair.
Councillor Brodie.
Yeah, I tried to ask earlier on about reverse proportionality, but didn't get any answer whatsoever. Can I try again? Should I seek to vote against reverse proportionality, will it actually have any effect on the current proposed membership of corporate scrutiny, other than to remove the rubbish that the opposition have a majority on that committee?
If you want to, Mr. Potter.
Thank you, Chairman. The political balance figures in terms of the allocation of seats are at the moment on the political proportionality in terms of the seats which the Alliance Group has, the Conservative Group has, and the ungrouped has. Unless members wanted to change that, and as I said earlier, you can make alternative arrangements, as Councillor Brodie's indicated, but if any one member dissented who is present in the chamber, then those alternative arrangements would fall. So just for point of clarity, we voted on the chairs and vice chairs, that is irrespective of political proportionality, because obviously people are on that committee effectively. So there's no element of reverse proportionality in terms of chairs and vice chairs positions. But as Councillor Brodie pointed out, if members wanted to change the numbers allocated on the seats, that is a matter for members, but you would need unanimous agreement in the chamber. Thank you.
Councillor Brodie.
I'm still puzzled, to be frank, because what I want to do is to remove the fiction that there is opposition majority on the Corporate Scrutiny Committee, because there isn't. There quite clearly isn't. It is chaired by somebody, he's not here, but I've said it when he was here, who is in the pocket of the Alliance, has their entire support, together with 4 Alliance members against 4 Conservatives. That's 5-4. That is not reverse proportionality. It quite clearly isn't. And I would like the opportunity to vote against reverse proportionality without necessarily having to affect the membership of the Corporate Scrutiny Committee as presented to us this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Brodie. Councillor Julie Jones-Evans.
Thank you. I've listened to what the monitoring officer has said, and I, for one, would not want to seek any alternative arrangements as far as the proportionality that we already have for corporate scrutiny. So, given that I would not support any alternative arrangements, I believe then there's no case to go forward because it has to be unanimous. Is that correct? Through you, Chair, through the monitoring officer.
Yes,
I get that assent. That's correct.
I believe that's correct.
Just we could we move on, perhaps? Would that be okay?
If I were Councillor Jones-Evans, is she saying that she does not wish to remove reverse proportionality? Because I believe that's irrelevant. The issue, surely, Mr. Potter, is that reverse proportionality can only be in place through unanimous approval. I wish to vote against that. I know this is a technical point, but I do not believe, and haven't believed for a long time, this is under the Conservative administration as well, that corporate scrutiny is in the hands of the opposition. Far from it. It's a cheerleader committee as far as I'm concerned. And I want the opportunity to vote against reverse proportionality. Now, surely we have to do that annually. So there should be a proposal tonight that you all agree with reverse proportionality, they all stick their hands up, and I stick my hands up against it, and it falls. And that's what I'm trying to achieve.
Thank you, Mr. Potter.
Thank you, Councillor Brodie, and thank you, Chairman. As I said earlier in the meeting, the agenda paper deliberately had on alternative arrangements to facilitate a change, etc. At the annual meeting, it's a triggering event where we have to review the political proportionality in terms of the allocation of seats according to the percentage of councillors in particular groups and the ungrouped. That is the position at the moment. And it's irrelevant for the chair and vice chair position. I need to explain that. The membership of each committee is allocated proportionately, and full council effectively has to implement the wishes of each of the political groups, and by and large respect the proportionality for the ungrouped. That then leaves committees established, and that is the proportionality in terms of membership of the committees. So if members wish to set aside the allocation of numbers proportionately, as is indicated, in order to give a majority to another group or series of groups of people, that would require unanimous agreement by members present. And I think that probably hopefully explains the position. So I'm in members' hands as to what you've proposed.
You still unhappy, Councillor?
Chair, I don't want to do that. I don't want to change the
member. You don't
member.
always get what
What
you
I
want.
want to do is I know, far from it, Chair. When you've been on this council as long as I have, you're in opposition, you learn that. But the bottom line is, reverse proportionality requires unanimity. I want to vote on that to remove the unanimity cloak, the fiction over the Corporate Scrutiny Committee. I don't care about the people who are on it, because they can, Councillor Quigley can pretend he's an opposition member till the cows come home. He's not, as far as I'm concerned. He's in the pockets of the Alliance, just as Councillor Garrett and Councillor Pitcher are.
I'm going to get some advice on the procedure for this. Thank you.
I think I'm not getting good advice here, frankly. Sorry, Mr. Potter.
No, thank you, Councillor Brodie, and thank you, Chair. I think just to sort of reiterate, and you know, I can only sort of try to explain. The position from last year is wiped clean automatically at the annual meeting. So whatever arrangements might have happened last year, and however members might have understood what happened last year, it is a total clean sweep this evening, where it is politically proportioned seats as per set out in the document circulated. And I'm grateful to Councillor Brodie explaining that sort of he is not proposing reverse proportionality, as far as I understand, in terms of changing anything. It's the political proportionality according to the seats which the political groups have, and also the ungrouped, etc. So it is clear, hopefully, and I think that I'll hand over to the Chair because I think Councillor Jones-Evans wants to speak.
Councillor Jones-Evans.
Thank you. So you'd finished explaining the position, had you, Mr. Potter? Sorry, I wasn't meaning to interrupt you. I was just indicating that I wanted to be heard in a moment. You'd finished. Okay. So earlier on this evening, Councillor Robertson, you said that reverse proportionality, that you welcomed that. I think that's all maybe paraphrasing, but you welcomed that for the corporate scrutiny. So I'm just a bit confused right now, because I think that's very pretty much fundamental that we have that we brought that back in last year. I don't think there's any alternative range being put forward, but if alternative ranges are being put forward, so if the reverse proportionality is being proposed for that to be rescinded and going to the regular proportionality, as is with the other committees, does that then have to be seconded? Would that, if I could get that answer?
Councillor. Do you want me to? So Robertson, sorry, I've got a list.
Thank you, Chair. There's no need to be confused about my position, Councillor Jones-Evans. I welcome reverse proportionality.
I wasn't confused about your position. No, I'm very clear if I heard you earlier. Sorry.
Fine, okay.
I was just waiting for an answer from the monitoring officer regarding I do apologise, but I was waiting for a reply from you, Mr. Potter, through the chair. Does it have to be seconded?
Sorry, Chair. I think Councillor Pitcher would want to speak at this stage, or another councillor.
Councillor Bacon first, then Councillor Pitcher.
Chair, thank you. I do wish to put my position on corporate scrutiny on the record, that I welcome reverse proportionality, but of course it means nothing because there are 4 Conservatives and 4 Alliance, regardless of whether reverse proportionality exists. But of course, also a voting member of corporate scrutiny is a East Cowes Town Councillor who is not elected to this council at all, and he happens to be the election agent of 2 Alliance members. So reverse proportionality is a fiction. And in fact, the Alliance, through their political allegiances, in this case with the Green Party, do have effective control of Corporate Scrutiny Committee.
I believe that the Conservative group used to chair it themselves in the past.
Before my time, and I'm happy to say that should not happen going forward. It's not a healthy situation, and I'm prepared to put that on the record.
Can I have Councillor Bacon, please?
Thank you, Chair. I don't think I've had the chance to say congratulations on your appointment. Congratulations. I think a few of us are a bit confused as to what is being proposed here, but to clarify, it seems to be suggesting we remove a clause requiring unanimity. That seems to be what is being requested, but how does one do that? Do you require unanimity to remove a unanimity clause? Because if you do, then that would seem to allow an issue to be dealt with by a majority.
by taking out the unanimity clause with a simple majority rather than unanimity, and therefore overriding the unanimity clause by that majority rather than obeying the original unanimity rule.
Through
I just wondered if you could clarify that.
I doubt it.
through you, Chair, if I may clarify Councillor Bacon's point. The alternative arrangements by law under the Local Government and Housing Act 89 do require unanimous agreement. Now, obviously, there were certain decisions made last year, announcements and so forth. But as has been said already this evening, the actual figures do reflect the political proportionality of the current groups and the unaligned. So there isn't any element of reverse proportionality. If members had wanted to change the balance of voting effectively to have total minority votes for the controlling administration, give the majority vote to the opposition, then that would require unanimous agreement to achieve that. The default position is it's proportionate to the seats of the political groups and the unaligned. If you want to change that, as I say, this is where Councillor Bacon's point comes in. By law, you'd have to have everybody in agreement in the chamber, and I doubt whether you'll have that tonight. Thank you.
Hear from Councillor Pitcher.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to come back on Councillor Brodie's original point where we started this discussion from, on reverse proportionality and removing it from this report. I've reread it. I can't actually see any mention of it. I don't believe it's in there. In which case, I'd be interested to know exactly what Councillor Brodie would like to amend within this report that would remove it, as it doesn't appear to be in there anyway.
Yeah, I'm still confused as
No,
to what you were
last year, this council agreed to implement reverse proportionality in the Corporate Scrutiny Committee. But when you look at the numbers of Isle of Wight councillors, that doesn't apply unless you count the unaligned member as an opposition member. But even then, the committee is still proportional. Am I right so far? It is proportional. So in effect, the reverse proportionality decision was never implemented. I don't want it implemented particularly. I don't. But what I want is to remove that decision from last year to do it. That's what I want to do. I want the opportunity to vote on it, which I thought I had an opportunity to vote annually on whether reverse proportionality applied. And that just shouldn't need me to get a second or anything. It should just automatically happen. And then I can stick my hand up against it because, as I've said repeatedly, it's a fiction. It doesn't actually exist.
Thank you, Councillor Brodie, and thank you, Chairman. This is the point. It's wiped clean automatically because it's the annual meeting, and therefore whatever you'd agreed last year, whether it had been reverse proportionality or whatever the figures, etc., total wiped clean tonight, and therefore you get what you're seeking to achieve automatically by operation of law. So the net effect is the figures of the seats are as in front of you, with the nominations from the Conservatives status quo, and in relation to the Alliance as set out in the paperwork circulated, subject to the clarification that Councillor Julie Jones-Evans is a permanent member of the Harbour Committee. I'm not aware that there's been any subsequent changes after the Alliance Group has had time to review the nominations. So it is really a matter for members to vote on the committee seats. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Carter. I think that's been made clear to us that I'm not going to take any more comments on it. I think we're just going to move on. Yeah, we're going to move on to the voting on that. I think it's been made clear the position on that.
And through you, Chair, I think obviously Councillor Jordan might want to speak, but if just quickly clarify, the report you've got in front of you deals with the political proportionality review, which is the status quo in terms of the allocation of seats to the various groups and so forth. The wishes are as expressed by the both political groups and by the ungrouped councillors. The report also goes on to talk about clarification in terms of the existing terms of reference to the Audit Committee, because it deals with consideration of corporate governance matters, and clearly the Council Constitution covers that. And therefore, it's in there just purely for clarification. There's been a request in the report for explicit reference to the appointment of the Strategic Manager for Regulatory and Community Safety Services as the proper officer for the particular legislation set out in the report. And the final recommendation in that report, which is a matter which I think has got, cross-party support, is that the Constitution be further reviewed this year and a report be brought back to a future meeting of the Council. So to sum up, the recommendations are there in the report. And the appendix reference in the recommendation is to the one which we've explained as amended, but status quo for the Conservatives. And therefore, it's a matter for members to formally propose a motion and second whatever they wish to do. Thank you.
Councillor, was it Councillor? I think Councillor, which one was first? Jarman?
Thank you, Chair. I think what we're dealing with here is a matter of really a mathematical accident, which arises out of the proportionality we have between the representation in the chamber. And the difference we're discussing is between one of numerical reverse proportionality and effective reverse proportionality, which in this instance, purely by means of that mathematical accident, does not provide effective reverse proportionality because of the numerical base upon which it is based. The other issue here, of course, is that any change requires, as we've heard, unanimity. There doesn't appear to be any unanimity here, and I certainly haven't heard, I think a detailed proposal is indeed required and an examination of this to go forward with a different model. So I'm going to propose that we accept the paper as is, recognising the need to do further work on this and to bring forward a proposal at some stage, and I'll look for a seconder to that motion, please.
Thank you. Councillor Jordan, did you want to speak on that?
Thank you, Chair. It was two questions. One, I think, is answered by self-evidence. That the buzzer went off and we were going to move on. I just was going to ask, was there a timing on this? That was the first thing. But seeing as I'm talking, obviously we can carry on. The other point that I wanted to make was a further confusion in this, and I'd actually thank Councillor Brodie for bringing this because it's actually been interesting, if not confusing, to get your head around this. And I'll thank Councillor Jarman for showing some clarity on that. But Councillor Brodie mentioned, which I understand, one member on the scrutiny, which of course is the IWalk member. And so my question is, Chair, to what extent can this council control the member from IWalk and their background, experience, knowledge, or particular leanings, so that if we were to adjust, as Councillor Brodie is suggesting, the arrangements, that could be reversed or added to by the member of IWalk. So I'd like some clarity on how we can ensure that the member from IWalk either is or isn't, depending on what Councillor Brodie is trying to achieve here, a member of the alliance or not, or supportive of, or whatever terminology we want to use.
Okay. I don't believe we have any jurisdiction over the IWOC representative, but Mr. Potter.
Thank you, Chairman. I think sort of the short point is that members have agreed that there be a representative from IWOC on the Corporate Scrutiny Committee, and that obviously, as Councillor Robson's rightly said, it's a voting member at the present time. I think without going too much into it, one of the principles of political proportionality is if there was a majority group on the council, and there is not a majority group on the council, overall majority group, then one would always have to ensure that one of the principles that the majority group always has the majority on each committee, then you'd have to make sure that that actually happened. At the moment, there is no overall majority for any one group. And coming back to the point which Councillor Jordan's made, it's really at an earlier stage as to, do you want external councillors serving on committees, and if so, on what basis, a voting or non-voting scenario. So I think that would link into a part of the constitutional review in terms of who you have currently and who you might want to have on, if at all, on committees, and that could lead into obviously engagement with members in the coming time to decide what you wish to do. Thank you.
I'd like to move on from this, but I will take Councillor Ward, as he had said up earlier.
Thank you, Chair. In fact, my question is pretty much along the lines of what. Sorry. Go on, Councillor. Yeah. Asked in terms of the additional non-elected co-opted member. If the reverse proportionality factor is null and void at the annual council, is that null and void as well? And do we do the? I think you sort of answered it, but do we have to go through that motion again to get someone? Because quite clearly the person is.
Through you, Chair, just quickly answer Councillor Ward's point. The political proportionality calculations are on elected members for this local authority. But obviously, sort of one of the, as I said, one of the principles which does not currently apply would be one of the earlier principles which would have priority is always ensuring the majority group of a council has majority control on all committees for obvious reasons. We're in the situation, as was said earlier at the meeting, about no overall control, and therefore sort of, that is reflected in the proportionality of the elected councillors on this authority. That does not include, obviously, proportionality for the co-opted member, to clarify. Thank you.
Want to move on to vote on this now, though? Oh, okay.
So I thank Councillor Jarman and Councillor Jordan for their comments, which I think what we're actually saying is the only cure for the situation we're in is an election, unless we have the unanimity that is has been spoken of quite a lot up to now. But the point I wanted to clarify is, following the monitoring officer earlier comments about in response to Councillor Brodie, is what is being requested actually there on page 29 of our bundle at paragraph 45. Is that what you're referring to? And perhaps should be directing Councillor Brodie to Mr. Potter, because there is an option not to approve and to agree alternative arrangements. So is what we're actually talking about could be achieved by that being proposed, but it would have to achieve a unanimous support to be taken any further forward.
Thank you, Councillor Bacon. Thank you, Chair. Again, I can only just repeat the fact that sort of if there is alternative arrangements, yes, it would need unanimous agreement. Things were wiped clean, as Councillor Brodie was seeking clarification on. So as things currently stand, then the seats are allocated mathematically, which is, I think, the point Councillor Jarman was making, mathematically as much as is possible in accordance with the statutory principles in section 15 of the 89 Act. Sometimes I do joke about not being able to cut councillors in bits to make things fit. So things are rounded up to round numbers, etc., in accordance with the principles which have been outlined. And that's why the documents in front of you indicate the number of seats per size of committee in a proportionate manner.
I will let Councillor Robertson talk, and then I'm wrapping this up.
Thank you. Just to speak to Councillor Jordan's point, I think, when he was asking what we could do, and if anyone's in any doubt as to Councillor Palin's political views, he spent a number of months recently with a Twitter feed, which Twitter profile said on it, FUCK the Tories, and that was the profile he was using for political activity. So perhaps given that, we should put a motion to this council that the IWOC representative doesn't vote on corporate scrutiny, but of course can continue to attend. And I am prepared to say quite happily that some of Councillor Palin's contributions are useful, and I wouldn't seek to see him leave that committee per se. But for voting rights for an IWOC representative, for someone who has FUCK the Tories on his political Twitter feed,
Point of order.
Is worth me making that proposal.
I don't think we should be talking about not a member of this council. Actually, IWOG is their own decision who they put on that committee. We should not be discussing it in those sort of political terms. Thank you.
I think it's this council's power to decide whether that representative has a vote on corporate scrutiny. IWOG doesn't have a vote on planning, but they attend. So my proposal, therefore, is that the IWOG representative attends corporate scrutiny, but does not have voting rights.
I don't think that would be unanimous. I don't know what any of you are on about now. I would like to vote on the paper that we're voting on. So can we just get on that, please?
Chair, we need to move to the vote of the original proposal. Yes. We need to move because we're just going round and round in circles. It is not for us to direct IWOC who they want to represent them. That is a matter for them and not this council as it stands now. We need to move on from this to the vote, please.
Yes.
Chair, I did make a motion earlier that was seconded, and we do need to, I believe, vote on that motion that I made before we move on.
So what do I do?
Through you, Chair, as Councillor Jarman's pointed out, there is a motion which has been seconded, which is currently on the floor, to effectively adopt the recommendations in the report as outlined with the appendix, with the Conservative status quo in terms of membership, with the alliance groups as in the circulated document, with the exception of the amendment to make sure that Councillor Julie Jones-Evans is a permanent member of the Harbour Committee. That is on the floor. It's been proposed and seconded, and therefore I've understood that Councillor Carl Love is pointing out that it should move to the vote. Thank you. In terms, through you, Chair, in terms of your amendment, that's actually sort of let's think that this one through. So just bear with me for a second. The amendment is proposing something which would effectively negate the motion, and therefore it would not be a proper amendment. The reason, just for clarity, is because of the proposal including the political proportionality of members, elected members, etc., and also the proposal would be relating to a constitutional change.
Conscious of time now, so I'd like to move on to the votes. No, I want to move on to the vote. I'm moving on to the vote. Oh, a mistake. Okay. Okay, let's move on to the votes for that motion. Oh, I'm getting the hang of this. Okay. I think everybody's had their say that needs to.
Point. Could I
Is it
point
really
out to members,
constructive?
IWELC is not representative of all the councils, town and parish councils on this island.
Oh, it's
Some councils belong to a different organisation, so why should IWELC have a representative?
Well, we've got the
Thank
motion
you.
on the table now, so we are going to vote on it. Okay, all right, I'm calling order on that now. Right, we're going to vote on it. What are we voting for? That is a good point. It is for the decisions we've made on the paper for.
Shall I remind you that the motion is to approve the paper as it is, recognising the need to work on this and to bring forward further analysis as recommended by the monitoring officer in due time.
Thank you. Can we do this as a show of hands? Yeah. Those in favour? Okay. Yes, that is an indicative vote. Are you going to vote against? Thank you. Any abstentions? 3. Thank you. Okay, we've got full council, outside bodies appointments. Yeah, we're moving on to outside bodies appointments. Are we happy with those?
Through you, Chair, members have the paperwork in front of them. 3 recommendations effectively in the report, and obviously the appendices contain the appointments, and unless there are any sort of, I think Councillor Medden was indicating that what was a potential change. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Medden?
No, I thought it had already been changed. I have made it quite clear that I cannot attend Yarmouth on Harbour Commissioner's Board. It's the wrong time in terms of my caring responsibilities, so I can't actually attend that meeting. And last, I've recommended that Councillor Spink takes that role for the Isle of Wight Council.
Thank you. Are you happy to take that role, Councillor Spink?
So I'm happy to do that.
Okay, so can we do this one on show of hands? No, another change? Oh, a vote on that one, not as a whole. Oh, you've got other changes. Have we got time for that? Take them all. Have we got, do we not have to do time? We're voting on that paper.
With that amendment.
With that amendment to Councillor Spink. Is there any other changes to that paper that need to be done in 30 seconds? It's all seconds? Yeah. Yeah. We are voting on the. We are voting on. Yes, the event. Oh, I've lost it now. Outside bodies, that's the name. I was thinking I can't remember the name of the paper. The joint consultative boards. I think we Oh, we're voting on it, or? Yes. It's 9 o'clock, the meeting's ended, so this. Okay, thank you very much for attending the meeting. The meeting is now over. Oh, yeah. That means ended.